Hello guys and welcome to Conan Exiles. Today I have for you a really nice treat. I wanted to show you how to build a completely unraidable base. It might not be the prettiest one you've seen, and it might not be the one that is easiest to get to as an owner, and it definitely is not one that is easy to maintain, but it is very secure. So secure in fact that if you do everything right, you will never be raided, unless something changes in the game mechanics. With the current game mechanics, this base cannot be breached, or at least I have no idea how I would raid it, so you will be quite secure inside. So as you probably know, there are many base designs out there that are very secure, and some of them are actually so secure that that makes them virtually impenetrable. I mean, virtually because they can obviously be raided, but with a massive resource expense on your side, and that makes them not worth raiding, really. But let's face it, in the end game in Conan Exiles, most of the raids that you will receive are because someone doesn't like you very much, and not because they actually want your stuff. So if you can have a base that is really impenetrable, where you can safely store your things, the better for you. And we will begin our process by finding a really tall mesa that is also solitary, like the one you see right now. There are a couple of requirements for that mesa to follow in order to make your base really secure, and one of them is that it has to be the tallest object, or one of the tallest objects in the area. Ideally, you would like to find two mesas, or a mesa that is close to a relatively high cliff that is inside the range of horizontal elevator. The other thing that you need to really pay attention to is whether the top of that mesa is actually pretty straight, meaning that there are no edges or small cliffs or small ledges that you can stand on while climbing, because you don't want your enemies to give an advantage, because this base can be blown up. It cannot be trapped, it cannot be orbed from the distance, but it can be still blown up. If someone can stand near the foundations, they will obviously be able to raid your base. So what you want to take care of is that the mesa you're building upon has really smooth surfaces. So smooth in fact that you cannot stand there and plant an explosive, or even just stand close to foundations of your base. So if you find a mesa like that, you can start the construction process. I find that those mesas are the most common in the desert area. There is a couple of locations in the desert area. The one that I am in right now is shown on the map here, and there is a bunch of more that you can use. It's a bit harder up north if you want to build a base like this in the highlands. It's a bit harder because mesas over there have relatively jagged edges, and it's really hard to find something that would meet that requirement of being also hard to climb. In the jungle you can find some trees that would also meet that requirement, but the design has to be slightly modified. So to keep things simple, we'll focus on a mesa base here in the desert, and desert obviously is a relatively good location for your main base because, well, it's in the center of everything. It's close to the north, it's close to the swamp, it's close to the NPC city, you have brimstone here, and everything you need is actually nearby, and all the other resources required maybe a one-time run and you're good with them. So this is a relatively good place to store your nice things, especially if you can store them in a very secure way. Once you find a suitable location, it's time to start building, and you want to find a mesa that has a top that is large enough to support at least 3x4 square of foundations, and you want those foundations to overhang slightly so that the bottom edge will extend a bit off from the mesa wall, and this is done because you want to have an extra protection against climbers. You also can bury those foundations slightly in the mesa, meaning that the top will actually extend above the area that you built upon. That is not a big deal. You can place a second layer of foundations, and then you will put a anti-climbing protection fence around the first one. Therefore, the top of your mesa will be secured from climbers. Here in my case, I needed to add an extra 3 foundation blocks in order to actually make sure that the edge of the foundations will overhang slightly the wall of the mesa. This is done only to maintain the climbing protection, to be sure that no one can stand near the edge of my foundations. I don't want to do that, because if they can do it, they can orb those foundations, they can maybe plant an explosives, and we want to make extra sure that this is not going to happen. So once the foundations are in place, now it's the time to add ceilings, and you want to put an extension of 2 ceiling squares in each direction from that initial 3x4 square, and once you do that, you add an extra ceiling in every corner. The reason why we do that is to make a room that will fit an altar inside, and also you cannot actually make it a bit bigger. I mean, you cannot extend it with ceilings a bit more outwards, because then you will not be able to close it off, and you also want to close it off because, well, You want to make extra sure that if anyone by any chance somehow gets to your base, they still won't be able to steal your archpriest and destroy your god protection, because one of the key features that base will have that will make it unraidable is the god protection, obviously. So you want to extend that in by 2 ceilings in every direction, and let me do that real quick and we'll continue when it's done. Next step in our building process is adding an extra support pillar in the middle, because, well, otherwise we would have some major problems closing it off with the altar inside, because we will be putting altar inside later in the video. So one of the possible solutions that you can use is by adding extra foundation blocks. Those are obviously taking up more space than just pillars, but are a little bit more sturdy, so there is an advantage to having foundation blocks. I also like them a little bit more, and trust me, you won't have any problems with the space inside, because we will be building walls that will be at least 4 stories tall, and you want that central support pillar also to be 4 stories tall, and that will create a really large room inside your base, where you will be able to fit all your storage areas, all your crafting stations. Everyone will have a place to sleep, and you will even have enough leisure space in your base for everyone to, you know, to chill out. So 4 stories tall is a soft requirement. It can be smaller, it can be a bit larger, it can be up to 8 stories actually, and it will still fit inside the bubble. But we found that for a medium-sized clan of 5 to 6 people, 4 stories is actually enough. So I suggest you build that with 4 stories, and you will have an extra edge of that bubble protection going on around your base to keep you extra secure. The next step in our building process is a relatively simple one, so I'll go over it briefly. All you need to do is put walls around the edges of your base that will be even with the central pillar that you put in the middle. In my case, it will be 4 stories tall, and this will be the main living / storage / sleeping area of your base. You can add extra floors, obviously, you can add extra staircases or elevators or hatches with ladders. It's up to you actually how you want to arrange the interior of that box, but this is your main area where you will be living. And now we need to close it off. And to close it off, as you can see, we actually had to add this central support pillar, because the stability from the walls is not high enough to actually allow us to close the ceilings entirely. Normally in Conan Exiles, if you had 100 stability on the wall, you would be able to extend the ceilings in each direction by 4 blocks, but well, we have a bit less than that. Therefore, we need that central support pillar to actually close the ceilings off. Next step is adding an altar of your preferred religion on top of those ceilings we've just built. And just make sure that you have enough space around that altar to put either some walls or extra pillars, because next step in our building process obviously will be closing that altar off entirely, so no one can ever snatch our archpriest without us knowing or letting them do that. So you will have the same stability problem when you will be closing the altar off with ceilings as you just had, and now we don't have that central support pillar going on, so you need to put multiple pillars or door frames or walls around the altar in order to actually, you know, be able to close the ceiling off. And once this is done, the last thing that you need to do to actually keep your base secure is put the climbing protection on top and on the bottom foundation level. You might need to extend the foundations. If you just placed 1 layer of foundations initially, you might need to extend that downwards and put the climbing protection around those. Or if you place 2-layer foundations, then you just need to put T3 fences or crenellations around those. You might want to do the exact same thing, put T3 fences and crenellations on top of your base, just to have the extra layer of protection against climbers. Just keep in mind that crenellations also allow you to look and shoot down, and you can even do cooler things with crenellations, like pouring burning oil on your potential enemies, so I find that combo to be very effective and not very expensive to make. Once this is done, the main building phase of the base itself is complete, and now we need to go into the altar room again and activate the god protection. And for that you will need to have an archpriest as well as 500 manifestations of zeal. So, as you can see, it's a little bit of a grind, but the payoff is really huge. Your base will be quite secure after this god protection is activated. Now, the god protection in the recent version of the game is 36 hours, so you will need to reset it every 36 hours, or at least every time you are afraid or you think that someone might want to raid your base. So again, it is a little bit of a grind, but that's the price of security in Conan Exiles. Now you just have one small problem that you need to solve. How do you leave this place? Or how do you get back in actually after you left it? Because, you know, leaving is... it's simple, you just jump out, but how do you get back in? And there is one method in particular that we found works the best, and that is building a adjacent tower to your tower that is just outside, or actually, a fair distance outside of the bubble, the internal bubble, obviously, the one that actually works as a shell and got protection. You build a tower that is level flush even with the tower that you've just built, your main base, and you put a horizontal elevator that will connect your tower to the tower that you will use to get to your base. You remove that elevator every time you made the passage, so that elevator never stays in place if someone is not using it. And this way, not only you're safe because no one can put that elevator there, you're not only safe because no one can use it other than you, because there is no elevator normally. And even if someone destroys your tower, the one that you use to get back to your base, you can rebuild it quickly because that can be made out of sandstone. It doesn't need to be very sturdy. Actually, in our case, the one I'm going to show you, I just built a simple pillar with one elevator going all the way to the top, and then another one that I will remove every time I will get a horizontal elevator that will connect my main tower with the entry tower, so to speak. And well, that's it, If someone destroys it, I can rebuild it back in 15 minutes. That's not a big deal once, the situation is settled. And that's really it. All you need to do is stick to the rules, keep your bubble up, remove the elevator every time you make a passage, and you will be safe. You will be safe from any kind of raid I could think of. If you have an idea how this base would be raided, then please share that in the comments. I would be very happy to put that to test. So as you can see, orbs are not working, they are stopped by the bubble. Same goes for arrows and for trebuchet boulders and flaming projectiles. Gods obviously take heavy damage from the bubble, and the internal bubble is actually destroying them completely. The only weapon that can actually destroy something that is inside the bubble, apart from weapons, are explosives. And to plant an explosive that near to your base, there would have to be a flat surface around it, and we've taken care of that as well. So the base is unraidable. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please consider liking this video. I would also like to thank Luke, Carl Roth, Joe Loffen, Morax, and all my patrons on Patreon for their amazing support. My name is Mark Frim, and I will see you next time.